Hi, this is the Magnificent Midlife podcast, and I'm Rachel Lancaster. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now is our time. My guest today is Dr Louann Brizendine. She's the best-selling author of The Female Brain, and she's here today to talk to me about her latest book, The Upgrade: How the Female Brain Gets Stronger and Better in Midlife and Beyond. I just love that title. Welcome, Louann.
Thanks for having me, Rachel. It's so honored to be here and talk with your audience.
Well, I can't wait to dig in. I mean, the title alone just ticks all the boxes for me. So, Western society, we are so wedded to the idea that women start to decline, both physically and mentally post-menopause. But you are here to change all that. So, why did you write The Upgrade?
Oh, I would say, no, we're not here to decline. We're here to upgrade, and that's kind of that's part of the whole message. And I have been running the Women's Mood and Hormone Clinic at UCSF that I founded 25 years ago, and so I've been having perimenopausal, menopausal women in my clinic for all these years. I wrote this book because I love women, and I don't want women, especially younger women in their late 30s and early 40s, to dread this period because there's so many great things about it, and I wanted to talk about that because those old words, perimenopause, menopause, those are sort of fossil words that were made by mostly men in pharmaceutical companies. So those old fossil words, perimenopause, menopause, I just decided not to use them because they are basically very medical terms that don't capture that whole experience that we all go through, that I call the transition. So the age of like late 30s up to the early 50s is the transition, and I talk about the transition is the first part, then the early transition, middle and late transition periods. Then we go into the upgrade. So that's starting right when we've stopped our periods, and there's 3 stages to the upgrade. And those old terms, the perimenopause and menopause, are clearly medical terms, but I wanted women to feel that we know that every decade of life, the research shows, we get happier and happier and happier. And that is really counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive to just about everybody. But the research doesn't understand why that is each decade, all the way up until our 90s. So it's important to realize it has a technical term that it's called the positivity effect. So that is going on in the background. And the other thing is we have all of these waves that are jerking us around every day of the month as we go through our menstrual cycle for all those years. And all of a sudden we hit a stage where, wow, it's like Alice walking through the looking glass. There's all of a sudden this calm, green pasture where you're not on this rock and roll of the hormonal wave. So that's why I wrote the book, because I want women to know that, and to tell them the stories of lots of women in my clinic, my own stories, and share that with them in detail about how that affects the brain.
So what are the changes that happen to the brain as we go through the transition and the upgrade? And the transition is technically sort of like perimenopause, and then the upgrade is menopause, if we're going back to the original term, post.
Yes, exactly. So remember what happens in the menstrual cycle, right? So day 1 of bleeding is what we call day 1. And that first 2 weeks of our periods where the estrogen is climbing. It's being made from our follicle and the eggs. And then at the peak of our ovulation comes right after our peak of estrogen. But all of these changes in the brain are also happening. Estrogen is like pouring fertilizer on lots of parts of the brain, growing all kinds of sprouts in all kinds of direction. And then, boom, after ovulation, the egg pops out of the little follicle, and that follicle starts making lots of progesterone. The progesterone then acts more like Roundup or a weed killer. It kills back all of that extra growth that estrogen has just spent 2 weeks making. And it's like, then you just push and pull and push and pull that goes on in your brain of all of these circuits and all of these connections that are getting every first 2 weeks of your cycle, they're growing. And then the last 2 weeks of your cycle, the progesterone is making them all shrivel. Right before our period, remember those 2 days, most women have that irritability, or we call it in my clinic, the crying over dog food commercials. When you can just burst into tears over basically anything. Or I found for me, it was more like irritability. My husband would definitely annoy me with things that were not usually that annoying, but they would be like fingernails on the chalkboard those 2 days. So that we've had and gotten used to all in our 20s and 30s, that towards the end of your 30s, early 40s starts to change. And it can be more even erratic. It's almost like any day of the month can be like a PMS day in that early transition, right? In the early transition or early perimenopause. And then when that stops, we're into the upgrade, and you're not having this remodeling of your brain going on, remodeling of your brain and your uterus and all the other things, plus no more periods.
I know. I personally, I think it's amazing. You see, I went through menopause. Well, I was given an early menopause diagnosis at 41, and I'm now 55. So I'm 14 years through, although I think the diagnosis was probably wrong. But now that that I am in those still calm waters of post-menopause, I absolutely love it. And I say things like, the end of my fertility has become the most fertile time of my life. And it really has. And that's what your book is celebrating, isn't it? That's what your book is.
Indeed. And I think that one of the things to celebrate is that, you see, one of the things that fascinated me about the field that I'm in, when I was an undergraduate at Berkeley and then at Yale, I was fascinated by the fact that, hormones their purpose is to cause a behavior. Like, a hunger hormone causes you to eat. That behavior. If you have your sex hormones, when they're high, it causes you to want sex. And all of the hormone fluctuations we have in the menstrual cycle, they make you more flirty, kind of more seductive in that, like 2 or 3 days before ovulation. That's our most, they showed in the studies that women wear more makeup, and they wear high heels, or whatever it is, it makes you look more flirty. You do this almost unconsciously, and these hormones are causing this behavior in your fertility years of like, come hither, and trying to get the best sperm, trying to attract a mate for the best sperm. That's how Mother Nature made it. That's nothing wrong with that. That's just how it was in our fertile years. We have all of this going on under the hood in our brain of trying to make these behaviors happen. And the nice thing, like you put it, is after that's over, you basically have your brain back to yourself again. You're not being pushed by all of these fertility hormones.
But a lot of women, certainly over here, because of what the culture tells us, they fight that, and they see that as something negative. Therefore, they want to hold on to what came before. So I think it is so timely to have your book to encourage women to feel that they can accept this new stage of life, and not just accept it, but embrace it, but really see the power that there is in the upgrade.
Oh, it's so powerful because, you're able to be, when you're not just trying to people please or be a perfectionist about your appearance or perfectionist about everything. We women have spent most of our lives trying to be perfect this, perfect figure, perfect weight, perfect clothing, perfect hair, face, whatever, perfect breasts, whatever it is. We've spent a lot of years on trying to perfect ourselves in the mission to basically, we don't know it, but our brains are being stimulated to find the best sperm or to find the best male, find the mate to procreate. So we're released from that at that point in time to basically go back to being more direct. It's like, I think women people please a lot, especially during their fertile years. And you realize after that people, i.e. men, will listen to you because you have experience and wisdom and you have something important to say, and they're not listening to you but the way you look and trying to get you into bed. That's a whole new experience for a lot of us women. It's like, that is a wonderful thing. It's basically you're looked more like a valuable human being, not a sex object. And that I think women, to internalize that is a gift, to like oh, wow, I get to say my piece. I get to say what I mean, but don't say it mean.
I like that. I like that. It's so important, isn't it? And finding our voices um, is, I think, a huge part of moving into this next stage of life. So, what do you feel what other brain changes are happening that enable us to move into the upgrade?
So one of the things to know is, a lot of people know about that cool little area called the amygdala. It sounds like, it's a little area. If you put your thumbs right in above your ears and you put them in about one inch, you would find your amygdala. That amygdala is where all your emotional centers, where you get angry very quickly, or you feel disappointment, you feel all of the intense emotions sort of come from that area, and the hormones, the changes in estrogen going up and down, the progesterone going up and down the cycle, it's always kind of stimulating and retuning that to be more emotional, less emotional on different days. And we don't realize that's going on under the hood in our brains. When that fluctuation stops, we stop having all of these emotional triggers that we may be having under the hood. So it's not like we're not going to be emotional, we're not going to feel our feelings, of course not, but it's not going to jerk you around in a way where you're feeling slightly unpredictable.
So what do you think? I know there are ways that we can sabotage the upgrade, aren't there? What are some of the ways that women sabotage it?
So I think that wholeheartedly, with our whole heart embracing it, the advantage of that is that this idea that you have to stay in your fertile female state of mind and physicality is really a tragedy for women, because that is a saboteur of that, to feel like you have to look like you did when you're 25 when you're 55. That's just that's not on, for one thing, or else you're going through all kinds of surgeries that may end up killing you or maiming you, or whatever that is. It's not helpful to the inside of you and to who you are as a person. So that's I think chasing after that is, we see lots of women doing that for a while. All of us do that to a certain extent. It's very hard to give up the idea of the power we had for our attractiveness when we were in our 20s. I mean, that's a memory that's a very strong memory for all of us, that, and we all sort of feel like, oh, if we can just keep capturing some of that, that we want to continue to have that power. But what most women don't realize is, oh my goodness, there's so much other power on the other side of that, to be able to be more direct, to say what you want, to say what your needs are. Women don't realize that you're going to get your needs met better after you go through into the upgrade.
So we're happier, we're more able to communicate our needs, but I think you also talk about, actually, we're able to be more focused as well. Is that right?
So your focus in your brain changes as well, in that, this multitasking that we do, right? The multitasking, it's really goes along with anxiety. And so our brains when we're younger, we're all these balls are flowing in the air, and we're anxious about it all. And what happens, though, is the brain gets to shift and change, where you cannot hold so many things at once in your mind. And there's two parts of your brain, the two frontal lobes. You can hold one thing, and as soon as you pick up the other thing, that other part of your brain will drop the other thing. So it's like, how it's become, at least for me, it's become, it's like, when I have to do something, I need to go do it right then. If I have other things that are distracting me, sometimes then it will make me forget that thing I was going to do for a while. So you learn that you have to become more focused and do one thing at a time. And the advantage of that is you become more focused and you don't have as much anxiety, because you're not in the middle of multitasking. So it ends up being an advantage, not a deficit, to be able to focus better and to more clearly get things done one at a time.
And you also talk about body hacks for the brain, don't you? So
lots. I did hacks? A lot of chapter 6 and 7. It's all about body hacks. Yes.
So tell us about those.
So the cool thing about this stage is like that, if biology is destiny unless you know what it's doing to you. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is to let women kind of open the hood on their brain, kind of look in and see what's going on. And one very cool body hack is based on this really great study they did of women in their 80s and testing their cognition. So those women in their 80s that had the best cognition also had the strongest leg strength.
Wow.
So isn't that interesting? So
yeah.
What you need to know is the correlation between the strength of your muscles and your cognition is really linked together. So one of the body brain hacks is that you know that fact, and you basically just work to keep your muscles as strong as possible. Now, muscles release something into your bloodstream that basically communicates with the brain. So if stimulating your muscles is also stimulating your brain. So I like to do, like, how we all sit a lot. We're at our computers a lot, whatever it is. So just doing some butt squeezes. As soon as you sit down, do about 10 butt squeezes.
Or I'm doing it right now.
That's right. I'm doing it right now too. Do the butt, and then doing the butt squeezes when you're brushing your teeth or something. Just link it to something else. Those butt squeezes will help you keep everything. It helps with low back pain too, by the way, but it actually stimulates the brain. It stimulates the brain. So I go through a lot of those little details in the book about the different body hacks that we can do that will stimulate our brain as well.
So tell us some more. What else can we do?
So
exercise is really important, obviously, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really whatever you can do, and I give people some little, like, little tips on what kind of protocol they can make for themselves. And one of the good things is you can basically do something that gets your heart rate up. It could be just walking, it could be swimming, it could be full on, like, Stairmaster or elliptical or whatever that is that you do. Doing that at least 3 times a week for about 20 to 30 minutes is kind of the benchmark. And that could just be taking a brisk walk around the block for a while, whatever that is, riding your stationary bike, just as long as you're moving, getting in the pool. For me, I like to be in the pool because I don't usually hurt anything in the pool. When I take some exercise classes and stuff, I'm always known to, like, I'm hypermobile, so my joints can get, like, really, those of us who are, like, very flexible, the yoga teachers are always so amazed. I come into the class, I can stand up, and then I can just bend over and put my palms on the floor without, just because and they think, oh, wow, she's really good at this. I'm thinking, like, oh, they have no idea. This is just, so you can get hurt a lot in class. Don't stop doing things that hurt you. Do things that are helpful for you. Whatever that is for you is really important. So that's another good tip for just trying to keep yourself moving forward. And if you have, a lot of women end up with some mobility problems in their 50s and 60s, and just attend to those. If you have knee or ankle or hip pain or whatever that is, get yourself to the right medical care so that you have someone to follow that along with you and get treated, because don't let yourself become immobile at this stage. It's like, how it is with horses. Once the horse is down, they're usually dead. I mean, they usually have to put the horse down. Don't think of yourself as that horse. You don't want to start laying down because somebody's going to put you down. So just keep your mind going towards something that's going to be keeping everything moving.
It's so important, isn't it? I mean, this is a theme that I keep coming across, and I actually try and tell my mom, to get out and exercise because it's good for her brain. When she can't remember something, I'm saying, well, go for a walk, then you'll remember it. She doesn't then remember to go for the walk, but it's true, isn't it? This connection between exercise and the brain is so tight.
It's so tight, and it's also decreases your chances of dementia. In the book, I talk a lot about how to maintain your cognition, because I love the brain. I love the brain. I love women's brain, the female brain. I love the female brain. I just want women to think of this as their special organ that they love so much and that they're going to take the best care of they can. And one of the things that is now coming back into, I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the US, there's lots of work being done on dementia, but particular women's Alzheimer's, and that if you have a family history of dementia, that is a reason to talk with your medical care about starting on HRT or starting on estrogen replacement, because you'll hear a lot more about this in the next 5 or 10 years, because all these big research studies are being done on taking estrogen in your late 40s and early 50s to help your brain not go into dementia if you have a family history of Alzheimer's. or of dementia. So I think that that we have underutilized in the last 20 years the hormones because of that big study that came out that was completely wrong. You know, they didn't start giving those women, the average age they started giving women those hormones was
It's in their 60s,
64.
wasn't it? Yeah,
64.
that
I
is
think like,
bonkers.
oh,
Yeah.
that was crazy. And they were smokers in those days. I mean, there was there was all kinds of other things going on that they've now reanalyzed the data and realized, oops, we made a big mistake here. So if you don't have a history of genetic breast cancer, or you don't, you know, there's certain reasons not to take the hormones. But the first 5 years, you can take the hormones for at least up to 5 years at the transition without any risk of breast cancer or any other bad things happening. So that has become, I don't know how it's going on in the UK, but certainly in the States, we're going back in that direction now to carefully choosing people who cannot. We put them in a category because we don't want to do any harm, but you may be able to save your brain power. It also for people that have a family history of diabetes, because estrogen really does help with your pancreas, your blood glucose control, and really helps people not go down the path going towards diabetes. So that's definitely another one.
I think it's very mixed. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it, and I'd rather that people looked to sort of ways to change their lifestyle as well, you know, to really sort of listen to their bodies too. So, but we definitely need more research, because it seems a bit muddled still. Certainly over here, it
I
seems a
think
bit
you're
muddled.
correct. It is very muddled still, and I think that's why we're kind of watching. We're doing lots of these studies now to see what happens. So I think as each woman has to kind of like try to look at her risk factors for it, and think about you know, especially women that have like horrible osteoporosis in their families, or they're already getting bone density. Because I know that the bone, you know, that is one of the magic of estrogen, is that it keeps your bones healthy. Your bones stay healthy, and the bones and the muscles, you know, are certainly related, which means that they're all related to the brain as well.
Yeah. And you talk as well about upgrading the gut-brain team. What's that?
So there's a lot going on in our guts. You know, there's the vagal nervous system. Remember, down in the gut, that goes all the way through your heart, your gut, through your whole body, and it's very important. And I go through some ways in the book to kind of trigger increasing your vagal nervous system is going to increase your relaxation of all of your body, your heart, your brain. And so I go through some various ways of doing that. And also the gut itself has a whole lining of, like, we call it the second brain, actually, because it has as many neurons. Isn't that interesting? It has as many neurons in the gut as in the brain. It's just,
it's crazy, isn't it? It's just crazy.
It's a whole organ. It's a whole little brain all its own, like throughout the whole. And one of the things, it constantly is sending communications up to the brain, also to an area called the insula, insula, insula. I go into that also in the book, how you can, because it's checking all the time. The insula is checking to see what's okay down there, and you don't know this is going on under the hood of your brain. It's going on all the time, but increasing the way that healthy nutrients can get into your body, help give your microbiome and all the bacteria in the best head start that you can give them, will help keep out toxic things from your system, keep your inflammation down that affects the brain, and will be able to really help your brain health overall. So just keeping things moving through your GI tract, but knowing that it exists, and I think paying attention to it, like just we women have run roughshod and just over our body signals for so many years, that this is a time we need to start listening to that, as you say.
Absolutely, I'm always saying that. I've got to listen. Yeah.
You have to listen, and it's not just listen, it's like that you have to pause and have the patience to hear. I mean, the body isn't talking to you sometimes very quickly, unless it's acute pain, you know. The body talks to you in very subtle, kind of low tones. Yes, you know, it's not like, and we women just blow it off, you know. Think about how many times you really had to pee, or you really had to poop, whatever it was, and you just had to you just ignored it for like hours until it was like you were ready to burst, right? That's, I mean, it's like, just even starting there, even starting with that, thinking, okay, I'm going to listen to that call to go to the bathroom. Really, I'm going to honor that more quickly. Just starting there, because that can then start honoring all kinds of other things that you'll start to pay attention to in your body that will be also good for your brain during this stage.
I think that's what happened to me with the early menopause diagnosis, because I wasn't listening. And I was running on complete empty and very stressful life, and I wasn't taking care of myself. And then I think my body just went, okay, here you go. You weren't listening.
Oh, that's right, exactly. And I think that we all don't think about that until something happens. But so about 7% of women will go through complete menopause before 45. So it's not. I mean, that's not nobody. I mean, that's a lot of people be going through it in their early 40s, and actually even 1% go through it before 40. So there's a lot of women that there's kind of a lead up to it, and then about 1 or 3% of women won't do it till after 55. So it's a very long curve there. Most women, it's a long curve. Most women go through it between 45 and 55 is the bulk. And I think even if you narrow it down between 47 and 52 or 3, that's probably 80% of women will go through it at that time. And it's the not knowing when it's going to happen. We all remember also that we didn't know when our period was going to start either. That was,
but we dealt with that, didn't we? We just kind of didn't really matter that much, did it? I think, well, I started really early. I don't know what it would have been like if I started really late. I probably would have started perhaps to get a bit worried by then.
Yeah, I was 11, so my mother
I was 11.
I was 11 too, and so it's like I had a lot of girlfriends who didn't. You're kind of looking at your other girlfriend. They're looking, whatever. It's like it's something, but these things are very private for women. Do you know? I mean, it's like I don't know about for you, but it's like we don't talk about that. The starting of our period with your girlfriends, you're all seeing if everybody, because nobody's always on the same page. And then your girlfriends who are not going through it yet, they can't know what that's like. It's also like childbirth and labor and delivery. Everybody's just going to be different, and you don't want to scare somebody else or to, somebody who had a really easy time of it. It's like but women, I think it's really much more important. That's why throughout the whole book, the book is pretty easy. You don't have to know any science to read this book, first of all, because I tell lots and lots of people stories so that some people can grab on. I think us women talking to each other and telling each other, in the book I go into the really deep shit that we don't tell each other, but I think that, telling your girlfriend stuff that are close to you, it's like, it's relieving. I don't know, it's like keeping these secrets. Don't you feel like keeping these secrets of this transition and the upgrade is like, it's over, it's done. It's like, that's passe now. We need to be out talking about it. And I really value the way that you guys in the UK, and I know that Ireland is also thinking about it now, right? About the menopause, I don't tell it menopause law or whatever you guys call it. What is it? You're basically having menopause, you get to have some type of medical leave for it from your job. Is that it?
Not quite. We're not quite there yet, but companies are certainly embracing menopause policies now. I'm pretty sure that we now have it in the school curriculum, because we didn't have it before. Sex education for women ended with childbirth. That was it. So no wonder it's a surprise when we start getting perimenopause or going into the transition.
Especially for you, people that are early in it, like in the late 30s.
Oh,
early 40s.
For me it was, and I knew nothing. And I'd completely bought into all the negative narratives about menopause and what it meant, and I just felt like a dried up old prune. That meaningful life was over. So I needed your book then. Absolutely needed your book.
I know. They just arrived. They just arrived in my box yesterday. So I'm petting it. It's like the new baby. But I think there's something else. And I don't, as you know since you've read it already, Rachel, that it's not a Pollyannish book. It's not like, it's all. No. It's like it's not skipping through the garden and everything. Because let's be clear that a lot of women, especially women, I think that go through the early perimenopause, they start their transition early, and they're feeling. I would say the main thing that women would come to my clinic saying is like, they would tell you all of the physical things, not sleeping, and having the hot flashes, feeling too warm, and just also feeling that brain fog and the irritability and this like nothing feels right. And they would say, Dr. Brizendine, I just want you to know that, the joy has gone out of my life. I just don't feel like I did before. So I don't want to paint this really rosy picture of it. There can be some days and some periods, stretches of time in the transition that feel horrible. You can feel depressed and down. You can feel like you've never felt in your life before. And you can feel like, how can if I have to live like this forever, I can't go on. But my message to women is, okay, there are things we can do to help you with that. Speak up, because that is not a way to feel. And there's hope on the other side. So I think I want to lay down some pathways for women to get to the other side when you're feeling like hell.
It's so important, I think, yeah. And the more we can talk about it, but also that reframing, that's what I love about what you're doing, is it is reframing, because that's a narrative that is still missing. We've got it's difficult narrative. People know about that and often get rather scared about it. But the narrative about how it is good when you've crossed over is still missing, I think. It's not as strong as it could be.
So that's why I say to women, you have increased directness. You get to have increased focus. You have this validation from within that you may have never had in your life before. And you have this return of fearlessness in your life, and this expansiveness. You feel that these brain circuits now have the opportunity to quiet, and that hormonal motor that kind of drove this hamster wheel of worry, the worry hamster wheel gets disconnected, and you have a chance to. At least you can now identify an off-ramp from the hamster wheel, right? I mean, the hamster wheel will still be there. We women, we'll worry about things. We'll worry about the kids. We'll worry about, like we're talking about, the adult kids. I mean, we'll worry about the step kids. We'll worry about all kinds of things. It doesn't mean we're not going to still have all those worries. But you can now identify like an off-ramp. And if we learn to tune out everything that interrupts the quiet, the self-judgment, self-flagellation, that loops of rumination about situations in the past, present, and future, a new world of options open up. And I think our listening circuits for hearing, our own mind, as well as understanding, the thoughts and feelings of others, you can get those recruited more. And I found that the brain circuits for gratefulness, the gratefulness for your life, what I want women to hear is, that what's in store for them is serenity and joy. I want them to have the joy and serenity back in their life that you can have in the upgrade.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, follow, and share it. Also, giving a 5-star review really helps get the word out. You'll find the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you can get my book, Magnificent Midlife, Transform Your Middle Years, Menopause, and Beyond. Make the very best of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.